All right. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm so excited. It's my first time in Thailand, but also it's first time Nervous conference, and I'm so excited for this. I've been participating in many conferences over the last years in different ecosystems, and I'm very glad to see that the Nervous conference, first Nervous conference, has so much people. Even now in the afternoon, there's still a significant amount of people here, which I think it's great. So thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully my talk can bring some insightful ideas to all of you. My presentation today, I'm going to talk about app interfaces for a multi-chain wall. As a developers, we are more in the side here that we want to provide useful user experiences and interfaces for end users. I've seen a lot of interesting technologies, but mostly in the infrastructure side today. And I think if all this technology is not provided efficiently to the end users, it's gonna be lost or it's gonna not be used for anyone. I think this is something very important that most developers think on this underlying part, but it's very important to bring it to the real mass adoption. Otherwise, your efforts are not worth it, right? So today I want to talk about these 4 topics. First of all, I will make a quick intro on why we are on a multi-chain wall and why it's likely that we are becoming even more multi-chain over the time. This is something that it's very unlikely to change. Then we will see how this multi-chain impacts the Nervous ecosystem right now today. And then we'll try to provide some best practices for all the app developers that wants to start interacting with a variety of infrastructures behind the scenes, how to provide the user experience for your customers that they enjoy and they stay, then you can retain their participation. So let's start on why we are a multi-chain wall and why it's likely that we continue to become multi-chain and even increasingly multi-chain. And actually, multi-chain starts back in the time around 2014. Vitalik Buterin made this blog post on Ethereum and called on silos. And this is why, because at the very early days, most of the people, small community of developers were building on Bitcoin, right? And suddenly, a couple of people and groups started building different chains, started building different projects, instead of pouring all the efforts on Bitcoin. And Blockstream, which it's one of the early adopter companies, proposed sidechains, and proposed sidechains as a criticism for all these silos that were being created that were not contributing to a common infrastructure, all building for Bitcoin, but instead people were taking different silos and directions. And sidechains was a way to say, okay, if everyone is gonna build their own thing, at least let's use a common layer of tokenomics, which can be Bitcoin, and a common layer of security, right? So it was like an intent of putting things a little bit together, recognizing that fragmentation was started to come out. And so, but still, some of the Bitcoin maximalist arguments by the time were basically saying, look, building silos, it's a dispersion of efforts. It's better if we all work together. There was not that many developers at the time, so if all of us built on top of Bitcoin, then that's better than creating 20 different chains, right? And they had this idea of 1x to rule them all. So if we all built on Bitcoin, then we can create this global supercomputer that can facilitate all the transactions and payments. So then fragmentation includes that fragmentation is rather inevitable. And then it's the only way for the ecosystem to move forward. So let's see why we fragment. First of all, why we fragment? We fragment because we disagree. So the first thing we can do is agree that we disagree. And we disagree in many ways. The first way is that we disagree. And we disagree in many ways. The first way it's technical. It's probably we are going to use one infrastructure, which is probably very secure for tokenizing the assets, but at the same time, we will need another infrastructure for storing the files and the images, because other blockchains are not good for that. So for example, we may use Filecoin. And then for identities, we may use another blockchain, or for oracles, for price trading, etc. Right? So you can use a set of tools that has to do their own incentives. For example, in order to provide oracle data, it's very interesting to have a tokenomic layer that it's incentivizing to slash or reward people for providing reliable data. At the same time, if you want to tokenize an NFT itself, for example, in Ethereum or any other chain, you need to provide tokenomics that incentivize security and stake of this network or proof of work, but you have a different incentives here, right? So having all this said, basically the conclusion here, and I think it's very clear now, it's plurality of networks will succeed, and that's a good thing. This will provide more use cases enabled with blockchain technology, and since plurality of networks will succeed, then we will need interoperability mechanisms so we can aggregate all these services and provide very good user experiences or DApps that uses the maximum power of this global supercomputer, which is the union of most of the blockchains. So let's see how this impacts the Nervos ecosystem. So the Nervos ecosystem started as a Nervos network, but right now it's overlapping and having interferences with many different ecosystems. And let's start with Nervos. Nervos network has huge advantages. It has a consensus mechanism that provides a very secure, reliable, and efficient use of resources. We have a powerful smart contract capabilities, combining the cell model together with the RISC-V virtual machine for enhanced UTX model that has scaled transactionality and programmability on top of other blockchains. And we have a very good tokenomics for the long-term holding that also creates an incentive for efficient use of resources to create sustainable future for the network, and that's very good, right? On the other side, we are seeing Bitcoin Lightning Network that has been a very successful layer 2 scaling solution for Bitcoin that basically creates on-chain payment channels, that opens channels that can create unlimited amount of off-chain transactions, and then these channels are closed. So this provides a very low latency and very low fee transactionality in the middle. It has hash time lock contracts that mitigate counterparty risk by securing funds. And at the same time, it has a routing mechanism that allows opening a channel with an indirect participant and finding a path in order to make this transactionality. As an inspiration of these two, we have right now, and we've seen recently, the Fiber network. The Fiber network, it's a very novel layering on top of CKB that also joins and uses the advantages of the Nervos ecosystem and allows to open these off-chain channels for CKB and RGB++ assets. Apart from that, it also has on-chain contracts, leveraging the Nervos capabilities to mitigate this counterparty risk, and has a variety of multi-asset support. And the best part is that it's interoperable with the Lightning Network payment channels, which will create a wide range of assets activity available. So having that said, we are getting to a point now, then again, I think blockchain user experience was quite solved or being significantly solved for single networks, but now if we want to provide layer 1, layer 2, swaps, messaging between chains and assets, that's another nightmare, and for the end user it's very difficult that's being used. And I think the work that Bitcoin Lightning, Fiber Network are doing, it's fantastic, but if it will be a mess if all this work and talent it's not being put in front of the people and people can use the advantages that this creates, right? So there is a couple of best practices that we've observed to build customer interfaces, whether you are building the app, a wallet, in our case we are building a wallet, but that you can use in order to facilitate that. And first of all, it's consistent user experience. You want to still simplify it onboarding processes. All the people here that has the app knows that every single extra click you put on the onboarding, it's a percentage of users lost. So you want to keep a small percentage of clicks needs to be made, but at the same time, you want to provide some minimum amount of guide or tutorial on how to use the app so people get comfortable. That's something that's always there. Then what you want to do if you have multiple chains and layers, it's to provide as maximum as possible a unified design language. You want to talk the same visual style for all the chains. So if you are doing a transaction, you have to display it and show it in the same way, whether it's happening in layer 1, in layer 2, if it's in whatever network, so people feel comfortable and knowing what action they are performing. Chains are allowing you to perform similar actions in a different way, and you can talk a unified experience language. And same with interactions. Every time that there is a transaction and you have to do a pop-up, confirmation, etc., you can do that through all the different chains. And I think that's very important. Second of all, it's applying some kind of chain abstraction principles in design. So, for example, seamless specifics in each part, but as much aggregated context you can provide, the better. Same with wallets, that's pretty obvious, but if you had gone to this nightmare of creating an onboarding and creating a wallet, you don't want them to have different applications, and even in the same application, different keys for each network. So you want to provide a single mnemonic and then derivate that with the different algorithms and the different networks to provide a single key management. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for the user. In terms of adaptive design, I think, you know, the pretty basic, but transaction transparency, what users want to know is how much fees they are paying, how much time they need to wait. So if you are especially using different networks, it may be that the time for completing a payment channel on a layer 2, it's less than 1 second. In another network, it's 2 minutes. Always provide what's the total aggregated number of time. Maybe you can provide some small details, but that's an important part. And we believe that mobile first, it's also very important. It's, I think already mobile, it's extremely big percentage of all the blockchain usage and traffic. It's even increasing. So whether you are providing a native mobile or not, at least provide responsive, that design that it's adaptive to all the screens and sizes. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for users to use. And last but not least, standardization. As much interoperability you have between these networks as standards, the better. So for example, if someone here is familiar with the Cosmos ecosystem, there is hundreds of chains. All these chains are based on Cosmos SDK, and all of them has IBC enabled, which is the interoperability protocol. So having that, you can use applications such as Kepler, which is one of the main wallets in the ecosystem that allows you to interact with 100 different chains in an aggregated portfolio, and it's a very seamless interaction, and it doesn't matter if this number of chains is increasing, the usability is always the same. So and this is only possible because IBC is standardized with all of them. So I think that's very important. Same with bridges and also with identities. If we can share identities across different networks, that's better. For example, here we have DID. If DID it's recognizable and usable in all layers, in all networks, you can have a single DID. That's a very good way to provide a unique user experience. So to finish my talk, I will briefly explain how we are approaching this from Persist on building CKBull. CKBull was one of the first mobile wallets native for the Nervos ecosystem. We started about 2 years ago, and our initial approach was testing everything on the Nervos network. We've seen that it was quite difficult to interact as a user, to get a wallet set up in your mobile and start interacting with the ecosystem. So we've built a mobile-first self-custodial wallet with a user-centric interface, and then we provided access to all the Nervos features in a very easy way to do it. So it's still available. You can download on Google Play and App Store. It's CKBull Wallet, and then you will see that this provides a quite easy to use interface. Last year, we wanted to raise the bar a little bit. We've seen that the experience for developers was also very difficult. You need to build everything from scratch. So we added Signer app feature to the wallet, so then you can connect and you can do sign-in with CKBull, similar as sign-in with MetaMask, which basically allows you as a builder to don't worry about keys, just create your application and then adding this connection button, and then users can sign transactions and log in and identify themselves through that part. We also built a built-in on RAM, which helps new people that if they need to go find an exchange, register, deposit, purchase CKB, you lost 99% of them. So if you have one click in the same app that you can access some CKBs to start using the ecosystem, that's a far better conversion. We also integrated the ID as identity, and we are constantly adding address support, NFTs, new token standards, so in a single layer, so it's easy for users, but it's very accessible. So what's next? What's next for CKBull? So What we are working now is trying to embrace this multi-chain wall and all these innovations that are happening in the ecosystem, mostly led by the CKB EcoFund. So basically, CK Bull is going to be refactored to become a multi-chain wallet that embraces all this innovation following these principles, where we can support Nervos network, but we also can support Fiber network, we can support Bitcoin Lightning network, we can support interoperability between both chains, and we apply these chain abstraction techniques that I mentioned before to provide, or trying to provide, the best interface for users to put this technology that was now in a more underlying way and behind the scenes, to put it available for all the people to use it. So that's our plans, and we will be working hard, and we are committed to do it for the next years. So that's the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if there is time, or otherwise outside, and thank you guys for joining.